nuances. It's almost like reading government literature when you start to look at all the nuances involved. It's how somebody can come up with all these creative ideas. But I'm going to skip about 95% of all those and just deal with the issue around forgiveness and the situations that come into our lives where it's very painful or difficult to do this. How can you forgive somebody for some offense that's been given to you? Well, I'll tell you, it's a process. It's not an event, it's a process. Many people want us to think it's an event, just forgive and forget. Be over with it, get on with life. Well, that may be true in some things. If somebody stepped on my toe and they just got a little ouchy, yeah, I'll get on with life with that. That's an excusable offense. But there are other things, and everybody here, I'm sure, has experienced that. This is the process of life. And so when I looked at my particular issues around that, I looked at it with the opinion, let's put it this way, it took me time to come to the conclusion, to look at this, to see a positive aspect of the horrors that were done to me and to other people. How do I put this into a positive light? How do I make me a better person from this? God, what's the lesson that I am to learn? And in learning that lesson, it was an issue of basically two things. One, accepting that something had been done to me, accepting that I had been, or just recognizing, actually it was different. It was recognizing the possibility that I was betrayed. And once I sat there and I asked, was I betrayed? No, I wasn't. This was this and this. The mental gymnastics that you go through in the process of denial. Then I asked God, well, if I was betrayed, show me the evidence. Sure enough, within 1 week, I had 2 valid points of evidence that are irrefutable as to the situation that I was in. And they were totally independent of each other, and they had no knowledge of what I asked for. But it came in my lap. And that's a lesson that I learned. If you want information, first be willing to accept that any information, and second, ask that it be given to you. First the willingness, and then then asking that God, universe, infinite intelligence, whatever you choose to call it, or him or her or whatever, to provide it for you. And it will be provided. Maybe not the same day, maybe not 2 instances within a week like I did, but maybe in the course of a few weeks or time. It will come to you. Your answer will come to you for the question you are seeking. But you have to be willing. And part of being willing is to do the footwork, to do the necessary things. So where does forgiveness come from? The etymology is the big word. It comes from Old English. Forgave, to give. But what does it not mean? Well, forgiveness means to give. Are you giving to yourself? Are you giving to another person? Or are you giving up something? Are you relinquishing something that you have? But what does it not mean? It does not mean to excuse. To excuse something infers that the offender is not or has not done something morally bad or morally blameworthy, such as, excuse me for bumping into you. That's not morally wrong. Accidents happen. It does not mean to pardon. Legally, to pardon somebody comes from a higher authority, such as a judge or somebody else in authority, the boss of the company, to pardon somebody. It can only be done by a third party, but in typical use, the phrase, pardon me, it usually precedes a forgivable action. Mercy is similar with respect to punishment, and is used in the aspects of punishment to ask mercy onto something, but it's not forgive. Forgetting the offense or the offender is definitely not forgiving. So I come back to that. Forgiveness is a process to release these. I look at the problem that needs to be forgiven as being a held-on resentment. Now, I gave a phrase last week. I'll give it again this week. Resentments are the most caustic thing to its container. There's nothing worse than that, because it creates a significant degree of anger generally in the person. And when you are in anger, you're in fear. It's a form of fear, as I spoke about last week. But with that fear, you're harboring an evil of sense. Not evil to anybody else, because most people would not want to hurt anybody else, but it's evil to yourself. And it disconnects you from your higher power. So how do you rid yourself of these resentments and this anger? And you know somebody has a resentment when you talk about something or a similar experience, or you see somebody else who's had a similar experience to yourself, and you clench your teeth, or you sit there and you tighten up, or you just become numb to the world momentarily until you collect your thoughts. Well, these resentments again are caustic. These will do you harm. It ain't gonna do nothing to the other person who hurt you. They're happily on their way, but to you it causes harm. And you're the person who you came in with, your soul, your spirit, which you need to work, or excuse me for using those words, I'm sorry, which I chose to work in my way to get through this life, to hopefully be a better person, to not carry these angers, to not carry these resentments, so that I can do this. And today I'm sharing you the process, very much of what I went through, so that hopefully you folks do not dwell in these angry thoughts, do not dwell on these resentments. But you're going to dwell on it. It's normal. The more harmful something has been done to you, the tougher it is to forget. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm not asking you to forgive the other individual, because that's a very personal choice. I'm asking you to consider an aspect of forgiveness towards yourself to allow you to not harbor these angry thoughts that you are holding on to that are doing you no good. And neither, if you're not a happy person, or if I'm not a happy person, the people around me are not happy. So when we take care of ourselves and do the steps necessary to improve ourselves, the whole world is better. The whole world improves. This whole world becomes a much more loving place, because we radiate it. When we radiate love, we're a beacon of light. When you radiate anger and fear, people walk away. People go away from you. So what good is it to hold on to these? Well, there is some good to hold on to these things, and to hold on to them, the goodness that comes in reflecting on how to learn. Maybe the lesson God has given you is, how do you learn? What process do I need to do to go through to release this anger, to release this resentment? That's an individual journey, definitely an individual journey, but it can be done. And it can be done in a way that's very loving and kind to yourself. And a lot of it sometimes is practicing loving and good thoughts, practicing love, service to others. There's a variety of ways. But in my path, I spent a lot of money for a psychiatrist to help me get through this. No drugs, just a lot of talking. But I don't know if I needed the psychiatrist. I needed somebody who was experienced with it. And at that time, I sought out help from other individuals who had similar experiences. Experiences with these other people was intuitive in the sense that, you never experienced what they had similar experiences. So there was an immediate understanding with this other individual. It was a soul connection. We had been in the same boat and are in the same boat. And I offer that to you with whatever you have to go through, if you have any, to go through, to learn, to get through the course, go through the swamp. You have to go through the swamp to get to the other side. Staying in the swamp generally leaves the person as a victim. And if you notice why bad things happen to the same person over and over and over again, it's in their mind. They've not released the negative thoughts. And the negativity is attracted to them. And sure, they get accidents. Sure, they get into fights with other people. Sure, just shit happens to them. They get stolen from, blah, 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 all the bad things. You just name it. Where does evil end in some of these people? And where does harm not end? And then to see them to play a role that I call the victim role, where woe is me. Woe is me. I am on the wrong side of the fence here. The fence is greener on the other side and they won't let me over. Bullshit. You can cross that fence. Get out of the swamp. And the way I found it was by there are people who had been in the swamp and came out. Find those people. Ask God to bring them to you, and they will help you to get out of the swamp. Let them extend their hand to you and show you the path out. We all have this in life. We've all experienced this. I think we have. I can't speak for you folks. But it seems like from my reality, I've met a lot of people with similar experiences. And I offer them my hand. I say, I know this is the way out. Try this path here. I can hold your hand a short distance, but you're the one who's got to make the choice when the trail splits up ahead. And know that whatever path you choose on that trail will be the right path. You may go down the path and say, well, it isn't right for me, but you wouldn't have known it unless you went down that path. The same thing with dialogue between everybody. It's to respect the other person's opinion, because how would you know that other person's opinion if you didn't listen to them or you shouted them down? You have to at least make the attempt to listen to it, unless they won't let you hear anything else. I mean, there are people you cannot have a dialogue with, unfortunately, and that's sad. And maybe their lesson in life is to learn to have a dialogue, or our lesson in life, who knows? Every moment on this earth plane is done in to me is a lesson. Where do I learn here? Where's the positive I can make? Where's the lemonade out of this thing? Where's the sugar? Where's the frosting? Where's all the good parts in this? And it's there. It's obscured very frequently, but it's there. So in this process of forgiveness to release these resentments, what I experienced is very similar to what Elizabeth Kubler-Ross spoke about with death and dying. First, it's a 5-step process she outlined. The first one is denial. That's a natural defense mechanism. You're going to meet people who, they're just totally in denial of what you witnessed happen to them. And it's in some ways a very healthy mechanism. And there are people that I know that have had horrible abuses happen to them who cannot remember them. But frequently, many of them do remember it years down the line. Usually, for in my particular case, I remembered my offense in my 30s, when I turned about 35 or so. That's when I remembered my event. Okay. The interesting thing is that I went back to, it was all proven to me. All the evidence came out, and sure enough, my memory was correct as to what happened. The interesting thing is, when I had to deal with an institution that told me everything that I wanted to hear, but never followed up with actions. I'll tell you today, the Roman Catholic Church still covers up as best as they can their child sex abusers, and they hide them, and they'll go to any length to protect them today, just as much as they did 50 or 100 years ago, or when my case happened. They will, until it becomes too far in the public. And at that point, they'll acknowledge it and discard it and say, look, and make it spin like they're doing the right thing. It's unfortunate to see that, but that just shows you what the institution is like. I'm not talking about the people. I'm not talking about the sacraments. I'm not talking about the very wonderful people who work and minister in that church. The religion is beautiful. I cannot discredit the religion. I can only discredit from my experience that the hierarchy of that church has a dark side. The other second step is anger. Once you realize that this has happened to you, get a little angry. That's normal. And it's also healthy, because anger, you can sit there and reflect on it, and it'll motivate a person to do something about it, should they choose to. Now, the third step of bargaining, it's not in a court of law what I'm talking about, but bargaining in the sense, did it happen, did it not? I'll do this if you take this away. I don't want to go through the swamp. Can you take me over the swamp? No, you can't. You've got to go through the swamp. I'm sorry. Go through it, get it over and done with. Wash your clothes afterwards. But there's a lot of great people on the other side. Don't stay in your box. Your box that is containing you, the echo chamber that we live in, and we all live in echo chambers. I live in an echo chamber too, but I'm willing to sit there. I'm willing. I'm not saying that I always do, but I'm willing to hear the other side. Then comes depression, and very much so. But again, depression is one of those things that is related to the anger. And then finally, and this is the key here, there's a level of acceptance. A level of acceptance that those people who did this to me are bad people. Can I do anything about it? The only thing I can do is share my strength, hope, and experience with other people. And maybe somebody else will come out and say, you know, that same thing happened to me. What did you do, type of thing. I can, at that point, I can extend my hand in service. I can help that person through the swamp and come out the other end. But I do it with an aspect of love, not an aspect of fear. I'm not accepting it because if I go there, I'm going to get hurt. And to some extent, there is that aspect called PTSD. If I walk into a Catholic church, I used to anyway, not anymore. I walk in there proudly now, but I used to go in there and I was just shaking my shoes, shaking my shoes. What is this? All this is triggering me. Well, that's the normal process of working through the issues. Now, this is my instance. Everybody here has got a different instance at one level or another. And it's only personal. We come here for the personal experience and the personal lessons, should we choose to learn from them. And I don't know if I've completely learned from it. I'll still bark out when I see something wrong, but that's also temporary now. It's not consuming me like it used to. And it is something that opens up maybe somebody else's eyes, because I can recognize things that other people can't. When you go through this process of learning, you learn new eyes, new skills. You learn how to, when you see it, when you experience it, when you witness it, you can change a tire pretty well. It takes a little time, but that's why we often go to experts for their opinion. But I've got to caution you, many experts have opinions, but they're not all based in truth. A lot of experts will tell you to do things that is not healthy for you. And a lot of experts will lie to you, depending on whose paycheck they're on. They will tell you, follow the money, and you'll find a lot of truth when you follow the money. And that's what the church did. It's an issue of saving money that they denied all this. They didn't want to do all the payouts. In many cases they lost. In a lot of cases, that guy is now either in Africa or Indonesia or in some other obscure South America, and they're still being as evil as they were before. In this process, sometimes justice and retribution may be necessary, and sometimes you can't get it. I do recommend seeking justice. Retribution by yourself, it can be done in a harmless way to yourself, in a healthy way to yourself, but physical harm I do not condone at all. Remember that other person is on their life path too, whoever it happens to be. And some of them will never see, some of them truly are incapable of learning their lessons and correcting their ways. They are incapable of redemption because they see no wrong with what they did. Those people, you have to stay away from. That's it. Life and freedom allows them to do to you again and again and again, and they will do it as soon as they realize that they can get away with it. That's where justice comes in. Hopefully the punishment is severe enough that they will just learn, oh, my hand got burnt on that stove, and not to do it anymore. It's frequently not, in their cases, it's many times their actions that are harmful. Their thoughts are their own. So in summary, trying to take, again, I come back to that we're here on a purpose, each one of us. Each one of us are going to have individual experiences. To each one of us, the grass can always seem greener on the other side, which reminds me of the story of the pilot up in the 757 flying over Iowa, and so looking down, and he sees the farmer on his tractor and saying, boy, I wish I was down there on that tractor. I'd have so much fun instead of this boring job up here in 35,000 feet. And then you've got the tractor, the farmer on the tractor looking up at the pilot, at the plane up there, and says, I wish I was flying that plane right now. Yeah, acceptance. The grass is always greener on the other side, yes, but sometimes you don't, unless you You can appreciate what you have. Maybe your side is actually greener, and maybe you've got an easier path or a better path to go through than the next person. So, in summary, take your anger and negatives when you recognize them. Sometimes we don't recognize it right away, but learn to recognize those episodes, those thoughts in your mind, and see what you can do to ask God, ask infinite intelligence to help you to turn that into something positive, to make lemonade out of it. And you will. Sometimes it doesn't happen right away, and certainly it doesn't happen overnight, but sometimes it will if you give it the time and the energy for that. There are lots of lemons in this earth. There's also a lot of lemonade. Your choice. Thank you.